Dave, it's game week here in Columbus, Ohio. Just down the street there on Saturday, the Buckeyes will open the 2024 season against Akron. Dave, we just finished up with Ryan Day, Jim Knowles, Will Howard. I think probably the biggest thing to come out of it was some of the starters, which you've already started to write about. For people who didn't hear, what did we learn from Ryan Day about starters for Saturday?
Yeah, no big surprises, but Tegra Shabola will be the starting right guard on Saturday. Ryan Day didn't say, yeah, he's definitely going to start every game no matter what at right guard if he stays healthy. But he said he will start the opener. He said he's earned it. He said he needs to be consistent, but they said he's been one of the guys that they've been able to count on throughout camp. And he said that matters. And I think this is a good development because now you have Carson Hinsman as the top backup. He can be your top backup guard. He obviously can be the backup center. He started 12 games last year at center for the Buckeyes. You got a guy with 12 games starting under his belt coming off the bench now. So I think Tegra being the right guard, that's an interesting development. Again, not a surprise. Not a surprise. Sonny Styles is going to start at will linebacker. And Jim Knowles said really C.J. Hicks, he doesn't consider him a backup. He considers him basically a co-starter, but they really like what Sonny Styles has done. Coach Day's talked about that, talked about it today, talked about it last Thursday. And the other thing I found interesting is Chip Kelly is going to coach from the press box. I like this a lot. I think coordinators, they obviously see the field better from up there. It's a sterile environment. And you don't get to look your players in the eyes, and that's one reason like a lot of coaches, coordinators will swear by being on the field. But now you have both Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly are going to coach from the box. Knowles has done that since he's been here, this entering his third year. So I found it interesting because we had heard Chip Kelly was probably going to coach from the field, and Coach Day said no, he's going to coach from the box.
Let's talk about this Chip Kelly thing because I think it's interesting, not only from what you just said in terms of the dynamics of being on the sidelines, but you have Ryan Day down there who, while he wants to be more hands-off on the offense, made it very clear today when talking about like helmet communication, things like that. Like he's still very involved in this offense. So you still have an offensive guy down there. Now you have Chip Kelly in the box who will be Ryan Day's eyes and ears. Like to me, this just makes sense in terms of the way to do it. Now, I don't know how Chip Kelly has done things in the past and if this will take some adjustment, but they're already going to be adjusting to the headset communication and things like that. So I think now you've got kind of the best of both worlds with having two offensive guys, one on the sideline to talk to guys, one up in the box. And obviously Ryan Day has a lot to do. He's not going to be communicating with Will Howard in between every series, but Chip Kelly can do that via the communication stuff. So I think it makes a lot of sense personally.
It makes a ton of sense. It really does. I didn't think it was going to happen though, just because it's been so long since Chip's coached from the box. Even I believe his time and even as offensive coordinator at Oregon, I'm not sure about this, but I think he coached from the field. Obviously he's coached from the field ever since he's been a head coach, and that's been a long time. So I was thinking he would probably coach from the field. I love this. I always harken back to what Tom Herman said when I asked him about it when he was offensive coordinator here. He gave a great answer, and he had a great example all week. And you guys remember that Purdue game where Kenny Guyton led the comeback. Braxton got hurt, and Kenny Guyton was at the Horseshoe against Purdue. Kenny Guyton led the comeback. They got a touchdown. And they needed a 2-point conversion to tie and send it to overtime. And they had this play they worked on all week. It was, Kenny Guyton rolling to the right and then throwing back to the tight end, right? But they were just pounding Purdue at late. Carlos Hyde was just pounding them, and they scored the touchdown. And everybody's on the sidelines like, come on, let's keep running. Let's just pound Carlos Hyde again. Let's just keep running it. And Tom Herman's up in the box like, no, all week we said we were going to run this play, the throwback pass, if we had a 2-point conversion. His point was, if he was on the field, he might have got caught up in the action too, and maybe Carlos Hyde would have scored. But they worked on this all week. They said, no matter what, if we need a big 2-point play, we're going to do this. Tom Herman was able to be in that sterile environment. And so I think that's a big part of it, why I like it, being in that sterile environment where there's not a lot of chaos. Most importantly, you see the field so much better and, markedly better. As anybody knows from you've been on a football sideline, you can't see anything. Yep. But I get it. I get that a lot of coaches want to look their guys in the eye. I get that. But, I love this. I love that both coordinators are up in the box.
So Tegra starting, Sonny starting, no surprises there. Ryan Day did say they were going to roll guys at both positions, and C.J. Hicks obviously being the primary example for Sonny Styles. I think Carson Hinsman, the next guy in at right guard as well. I don't think you typically want to roll guys on the offensive line, but when you have kind of a lead into the season like this, does that make it a little bit easier, you think, to check and make sure you got things right, I guess?
For sure. And, I think there was one year, it was back in the Tressel era, I'd have to go back and look, where they, one year it was hot early in the season. They took the starting line out after a couple series and
the
put
whole line.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a hockey line. They put the entire backup line in. So And the rationale was twofold. They thought the backups were ready. They needed like some reps, and it was hot. I guess it was threefold, and then you're trying to avoid injuries as well. You're not going to do that against if you had like a marquee game, but against Akron, you can definitely do that and get away with it. And there's a lot of benefits. You're making sure that your starting lineup is correct. You're getting these guys reps. Guys like an Austin Seiderveld that's a redshirt freshman that they're pretty high on. Zen Mahalski, veteran, fourth-year junior, but hasn't played a lot. He's going to be the backup left tackle. Yeah, Carson Hinsman, some of these other guys. So, I think I really like that idea of trying to roll some guys in the Akron game. You're not going to do it against Iowa or Oregon, of course, but Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, those are the games you can do it.
It was interesting. Ryan Day was asked about getting backup quarterbacks in. He said Devin Brown will be the backup for Will Howard to start the season at least. But then Jim Knowles was also asked about, safety. Do you try and get some of those guys in early? And both kind of were hesitant to say, they're not going to throw Devin Brown out there in the third series, kind of like they planned to do last year. This is Will Howard's team. They want Will Howard to do that. Jim Knowles said, 14-0, we're keeping the starting defensive backs in the game. And so, they want to go out and win these games. And, you will rotate. Obviously, they've talked a lot about long seasons. But the idea isn't just, hey, we're going to put backups in 2 series into the game. I mean, they want to make sure they handle business. And I think, though the coaches didn't say this, they kind of know, this team has a lot of expectations. If you beat Akron 28-14, people aren't going to be happy. And, winning the game is the most important thing, right? But you get those backups in once you're up 20, 25, whatever points, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Like you might mix in like a James Peoples, for example, in the second quarter, get him a carry or 2. And then in theory, you have a big lead at halftime. You played, pretty much just the starters with some guys rolling in, like maybe a Carson Hinsman, James Peoples, here in a CJ Hicks, of course. Those guys that are basically starters. Not that James Peoples is a starter, but he's going to play in every game, no matter what. So, and then in theory, you have a big lead at halftime. You have the starters come out maybe for the first series of the second half, and then you put all the backups in. And then the fourth quarter, it's third stringers. Guys that even the guys you plan on only playing 4 games, trying to redshirt them. This is a game. This is one of those 4. So, I want to see, them take care of business. As he said, they're not going to have backups in there early in the second quarter. But, second half, I'm going to see a lot of guys play.
Steve Hellwagon's going to jump in.
Hey, what's going on there, world?
Steve, we talked a lot about what Ryan Day said. Jim Knowles, sounds like he's got this defense pretty fired up. I asked about coming off of a season like that, how do you kind of keep the momentum rolling? And he talked about, each day is a different day to go out and prove yourself. Can this defense be what it was last year or maybe better?
I think it can be better. They were awesome against terrible opponents. The schedule last year, there were a lot of really bad offenses in there. And I think I had a question in my chat last night that when Michigan goes jumbo, or whoever they play in the big games, and they put a lineman in the backfield and a 6th offensive lineman on the field, can Ohio State stop the run? And we're not going to know the answer to that because Akron's not going to be able to exploit that. And so we're going to find out some things about how great this defense can be, but there's going to be so many more questions, or some questions that are going to be out there until they play a team of that caliber, probably Oregon, Iowa, although Iowa's offense isn't going to challenge Ohio State much. You get into the schedule, Penn State later on with Aller potentially, and then obviously Michigan at the end. We don't know what that team's going to look like. We get our first look at them Saturday night against Fresno State, and we'll see how good they are. But obviously, so much anticipation for this team in this season, and we're just 5 days away at this point.
Dave, we also talked to Will Howard. I think this is the first time we've talked to him since he was named starting quarterback, right? So What do you make of him kind of handling everything? He talked about how Kansas State, he kind of knew last year was going to be his last year, but he didn't say it exactly, but it sounded a bit surreal to him growing up. He said he was a Penn State fan, but watched a lot of the Big Ten, talked about how excited he is to play at the Horseshoe on Saturday. How do you feel like he is in terms of preparation to take this team and get the job done offensively?
Yeah, it really seems ideal the way that he has embraced this role, for lack of a better word. I think I'm a firm believer, with very few exceptions. I think to be a successful quarterback, you need to be charismatic, and he's got that. He's not like a big character. He's very real, but you can see why he's a leader of men, why all these guys talk about him. One thing that stands out to me, a guy that I always enjoyed covering here, that I always thought was mature, was beyond his years, Dane Sanzenbacher. Had a chance to do a radio show with Dane a few weeks ago. Dane ran into Will Howard at the Cardale Jones softball tournament, talking for a little bit. Dane Sanzenbacher saying how impressed he was with Will Howard, and he can just tell that he is a leader, that he's a guy, he's heard good things about him. That was his first time talking to him at length, Dane, and he was going on and on about, Will, how, what a leader he is. And you hear that from the coaches and from his teammates. Even Denzel Burke's come around now and saying, like, Will's the guy. So I couldn't be more impressed with how he's handling things off the field. We'll see how he handles it on the field. As you guys know, if you've watched our podcast or anything, I'm pretty bullish that he's going to have a big year. I don't think he's going to be like the Heisman winner or anything, but I think he's going to have a big year for the Buckeyes. And but now, he's got to prove it, though.
Yeah, and part of it is passing the test in these press conferences, I think, and maybe that's not as important to fans who just want to see them win, but C.J. Stroud could do that. Justin Fields did that. It took Justin Fields a little bit of time, but maybe Kyle McCord, that was something he needed to grow into a little bit. Not saying that that's going to change anything, but I thought Will Howard stood up there today. He'd been through this before, maybe not in front of as many media members, but handled it like a pro. Steve, one thing we sort of touched on earlier, but I'm curious to get your thoughts. There wasn't a committal to which running back will start this game. Frankly, I don't think it matters. It's probably whatever play call is the first run play of the game or the first play, and who fits that better. But how do you envision this running back room breaking down and including James Peoples in there, who Dave touched on earlier?
Yeah, I think it's going to be intriguing to see how Carlos Lachlan goes about this. I don't think there is much intrigue to who's going to start. I would think it would be Travion Henderson, unless Travion Henderson goes to the coaches and says, look, let's make Quinshon Judkins feel, at home here and let him start the first game. I think you got to go with the senior who showed the loyalty to stay with you. I mean, he's a team captain and everything else. I think you've got to go with him as the starter. But I think Judkins gets in there early and often. I think you go into the game with an idea that they're both going to end up somewhere between 10 and 20 carries. And in a competitive game, this is how I would handle it. They would both get plenty of carries in the first half. Whoever's got the hot hand, that's the guy we're going with in the second half. And we can change out the other guy here and there. But I want somebody who's running hard, hitting the holes, and exploiting the defense. And that's either running over guys, running around guys, running away from guys. That's what I want to see from my running back. And anybody who is going to do that is going to play. And if you're not going to do that, then you're going to have a seat over here on the bench. So it's kind of matter of fact about it. But I truly believe you go with the guy who's playing the best in that given day. And it may change from week to week. I don't know. That's how I'd handle it. But I'm sure that they want to get both those guys and James Peoples involved in this game. No question about it. And once it's decided, bubble wrap for Henderson and Judkins, because they can't afford either one of those guys getting banged up.
The good news is Carlos Lachlan's done this before. He did it at Oregon last year with multiple backs, including Bucky Irving, who's now in the NFL. So not his first rodeo, I believe, was the quote he gave earlier this offseason in terms of handling multiple backs. Dave, anything we didn't touch on that came out that you feel like people needed to know?
Oh, geez. Coach Day seems – this is I asked him the question. I don't know if it was a leading question. He seems like he's maybe happier than he expected with the depth on the O-line. Not that he's, thrilled about it, but a guy like Zen Michalski, in my opinion, was a forgotten man, and maybe rightfully so. Right? He entered his third year last year. You're thinking maybe he'll be a solid backup. Really wasn't. But they think Zen had a good offseason, had a good spring, and has had a good camp. So things like that. I don't know if you really want Zen in there as your starting left tackle, but if something happened to Josh Simmons, maybe he could hold the fort down. Again, with Hinsman being a backup, that's a pretty nice luxury. And then Austin Cyberveld coming on. He's another guy we keep hearing good things about, playing tackle and playing guard. So maybe the depth on the offensive line is a little better than what Coach Day expected. I think we hit on all the high points, though.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up from this instant reaction. Thank you, guys.
I know you're doing Knowles and you're going to do Howard. Yep. And the day video is already up. put the video of the other two up in the comments for that, and they'll both have stories about it.
Tegra's already up too. Our story on Tegra being the starting right guard's already up. Steve's got Day up.
You hear all 33 minutes a day. It's up on the front page of the site. But more to come. And tomorrow night we get Day again. No one really asked about injuries.
That's a good point.
Anybody who's expected to miss the first game, I'm not sure who that would be. I don't know. I assume Donovan Jackson is back full go from whatever was bothering him. And then a few other players will be interviewed tomorrow after practice, and we'll have all that up here. And game data, picks, columns, everything else. I posted a story today about the 14 previous times OSU's either been number 1 or number 2. They are 0 for 14 on getting to the finish line.
Due.
That's one way to look at it. That's the positive way to look at it.
Yeah.
There you go. They're due.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, we're back. And so we'll be doing this every week all the way through. Stay tuned to Bucknuts. As Steve said, we'll have plenty of stuff the rest of this week. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
We'll talk to you later.